like animals, slaves to the savage superstitions of voodoo. Though the novel ends with Sandeman's revolutionary soldiers triumphant and their enemies routed, never again does it extend sympathy to those who fight for their lives, their freedom, and their sacred honor. Rather, it represents black soldiers as obsessed by their lust for white women, and those white women as nobly resisting the blacks' unholy feelings with the last breaths of their bodies. The women's deaths are often cruel, at times sadistic. They are beaten, skinned alive, beheaded. Our last vision of Le François is of a city in flames, its streets littered with the dismembered bodies of innocent white women and children. No matter how much they desired freedom, no matter how valiantly they fought for it, Sansei's text insists blacks could govern neither themselves nor their island. Sansei thus seems to reject a cosmopolitan vision of a racially mixed society, which her choice of a cross-dressing, freedom-loving mulatto as her heroic protagonist initially suggested. But still the novel opens celebrating the sameness of all men and their unalienable right to life and liberty. How can we explain this radical reversal? If the novel's object is simply to condemn the Haitian Revolution as a world turned horribly upside down, or to hold it up as a dreadful contrast to the reason and moderation of the glorious American, i.e. U.S. Revolution, why does it begin by so lavishly praising the black Haitians as freedom-loving Republicans and positively linking the two revolutions? We may find answers to these questions in the novel's fusion of political and sexual revolution and its representations not of men, but of women. Let us explore Sansei's two principal characters, those objects of the black leader's illicit sexual desires, Clara, the U.S. person, and Zelica, the Creole. Clara St. Louis. The 18th century novels always come up with the weirdest names. Clara St. Louis, Sansei's white heroine, and in many ways her own doppelganger or double, came from New York to marry one of Haiti's wealthiest white Creole commercial leaders. As represented in the novel, Clara is a dazzling beauty, cultured, polished, and adornment to white Lecoq society. Her rooms were filled with all the taste and splendor could devise, with mirrors so superb that wherever she cast her eyes, her own beautiful image was reflected. One wonders, do Clara's mirrors reflect a coherent liberal subject? Or in their multiplicity, do they fragment that subject, problematizing white liberal binaries? Indeed, can the white liberal subject ever be coherent, especially when placed in a colonial plantation society surrounded by fawning slaves? Clara's marriage to one of the leaders of Sandeman's commercial establishment is in many ways parallel Sansei's own marriage, which I didn't go into, so we can skip that. Can we read General Cloud's desire for Clara, therefore, as representing not simply uncontrolled black lust for a beautiful white woman, but more rationally as the desire of Haiti's black leaders for commercial and political ties to the United States? He's represented as this New Yorker this is before Wall Street, but he was representing in mercantile capitalist America. The details in the text support such an interpretation, for it tells us quite explicitly that Cloud values Clara not only for her sexual charms, but for the political and economic ties to the United States that he hopes an alliance with her would procure. How ironic, then, is Clara's death. She is unintentionally pierced by a sword. Freud is never very far from these texts. Pierced by a sword wielded by Zelica's white father, whose idealistic but misguided support for the Haiti's black leaders, the novel argues, abetted the revolution's accompanying carnage and destruction. Could Clara's death be read as marking the death of U.S. commercial connections with a new black Republic of Haiti, a political goal espoused and achieved by a majority of Southern Jeffersonian Republicans, so that we don't recognize, neither does France, an independent Haiti until, I think, the 1850s. Clara, however, represents more than mercantile America. She stands far more overtly for the United States' commitment to liberal principles. She is above all a figure of Spartan virtue. Chaste, austere, she stands outside the swirling corruption of Sandeman's libidinous colonial world, pure as Caesar's wife. A patriotic American, Clara longs for nothing more than to return to her own country, where, she insists, personal liberty is sacred and all the rights of man respected. Repeatedly, she praises the American Revolution, chides the French on the sad comparison their revolution and their military hero Bonaparte made to her revolution and the great George Washington. Clara's death at the novel's end may thus suggest that the blackness of Haiti's revolution overwhelmed both the liberal Republican promise of rational self-government, a self-government mainland white American men had achieved, at least for themselves, if not for most persons of color, and the commercial capitalist promise of a union between two American republics that would bring whites in both countries prosperity and progress. Yet we must ask, how ironic was Clara's celebration of her own country as a nation where liberty is sacred and the rights of men respected. The figure that rivets our attention, however, is not Clara, the beautiful, demure, and easily alarmed white heroine, but her dark and commanding double, Zelica, the Creole, the quadroon. Just a second. The woman idealized by General Christophe and the novel's title character. Zelica is the novel's driving force, complex and contradictory, a composite of endless layers of conflicting identities. She quite literally embodies liberalism's most vexing conundrums. The novel's only truly commanding figure, she understands and controls the movements of black and white armies, is able to thwart the plans of French generals and black leaders alike. Freely crisscrossing battle lines, sometimes in blackface, sometimes as a fine white lady, she sees and knows every military movement and every political plot. In a novel in which nothing is ever as it seems, neither is Zelica. When we first encounter Zelica, she appears a frail white woman who, trembling, turns to Clara for assistance in her flight from the flames of Le Cap. She is, we are told, as fair as the morning sun. The word Creole in the title of a U.S. publication tells us, however, that she is a mulatto. In U.S. discourses, the term Creole indicates a child of the Caribbean, and thus the bearer of a black heritage, no matter how distant and disguised that heritage might be. In Zelica's case, her black heritage is anything but distant. Her mother was her father's slave, we are told, but 1 degree removed from black, that is, according to Moreau's elaborate charts of racial mixture, a quadroon. However, when quite young, Zelica has been sent by her father to France. The objective to distance her from her black associations and to confirm her white appearance. This was commonplace among the plan to elite both white and mulatto elites. When Zelica returns to Saint-Domingue, a beautiful and marriageable young woman, she confesses she finds herself repulsed by the very sight of blacks. Though their advocate, I am not their admirer, she tells a French soldier. Whilst I think that they have an indisputable right to the freedom that they are struggling to obtain, I feel an involuntary sensation of horror at the sight of a black and never behold one without shuddering. Indeed, Zelica, when discussing her birth with an astonished Clara, while praising her father's resolution to combat the prevailing prejudices of his country and marry her mother, and thus bring Zelica into existence, confesses that this union that formed his happiness has devoted me to indefinable misery. Never does Zelika talk about her mother. Never in the novel does she refer to herself as black. Zelika is indeed a self divided against itself. Zelika's father, de la Riviere, a name that references a major river in northern Sunderland and the center of Toussaint-Louverture's successful military career campaign that led to the abolition of slavery in Sunderland and black military and political dominance. He is the antithesis of his daughter. A radical white liberal, he embraces both the French and Haitian revolutions and General Christophe in particular. As Zelika tells Clara in one of their intimate conversations, her father idealizes Christophe, talks with enthusiasm of his unspoiled energy, the ardor of his untaught feelings, and the native grandeur of his soul. De la Riviere reaffirms his support for the revolution, both by bequeathing his estate to Christophe and by offering Christophe his own daughter in marriage. Zelika, with her education and apparent whiteness, her father tells us, and her, would be an invaluable asset to the revolutionary cause. The revolutionary cause. It is indeed her duty as an enlightened liberal to marry Christophe. However, Zelika's liberalism only goes so far. Zelika refuses her father's demands that she marry Christophe with horror equal to that of the white American Clara felt on learning of General Clark's desires, pronouncing death preferable to marriage to a black man. Zelika proclaims the absurdity of the radical espousal of racial mixture and denounces her father's acts as madness and tyrannical. De la Riviere's relation to Christophe offers another key to reading the novel's complexities. On the pages of the novel, de la Riviere, aiding and abetting the black revolutions, plays a critical role in the transfer of the right to govern Sunderland from the white Creole elite, which he represents, to the black military represented by Christophe. We see two men engaged as well in what Gail Rubin calls trafficking women. Handing political governance to Christophe, de la Riviere seeks to seal the transfer by handing over his daughter as well. Carroll argues that the social contract, the bedrock of liberal political state, presumes a sexual contract that confirms women's political inferiority and consequently their exclusion to the social contract. I am feeling a little unwell, and I'm wondering if I could ask someone to read the rest of the paper. Okay. Just having a little disease spell, and I think that's from Jack Ware. So you started again? Okay. I think it should be easy. And I'll be here, I'll probably feel a little better in a minute or two. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I think it's still a little bit of jet lag.
Carroll argues that the
I think
social...
you have to speak now.
Okay. This is working.
This is.
Carroll argues that the social contract, the bedrock of liberal political states, presumes a sexual contract that confirms women's political inferiority and consequently their exclusion from the social contract. Zelika's marriage contract with Christophe thus not only marks a transfer of political power from white to black men, It reaffirms women's social, sexual, and political subordination within liberal republics, be they black or white, along with male Republicans' refusal to re-examine their continued exercise of patriarchal power over women. This at least appears to be Sensei's intention, for she represents Zelika's refusal of marriage as a refusal not only of a black lover, but quite specifically of her father's assertion of patriarchal power. Echoing actual French women's attacks on their own revolution's misogyny, Zelika angrily denounces her father's, quote, despotic disposition of my hand, unquote, pointing out that her father, that, quote, enthusiast for liberty, leaves his daughter no choice but the most abhorrent slavery and death, unquote. Boldly refusing the sexual contract, Zelika refuses the sexual polarities it affirms. Her father, as she tells Clara, thinks her, quote, all soft, all submissive, unquote, which is the way the sexual contract constitutes women, but she is not. Quite the contrary, she has inherited her father's own energy. Like him, she continues, quote, I will sacrifice my life to save my feelings from violation. I will sacrifice my life to save my feelings from violation, thus proclaiming her right to self-determination. But this passage also calls to mind Gayatri Spivak's contention in three women's texts that white women, to assert their right to a liberal humanist subjectivity, joined white men in endorsing racism and imperialism. While criticizing the U.S.-French Revolution's misogynist refusal of active citizenship to women, Zelika, and presumably Sensei, enact the racism embedded